Hi, my name's Arthur Stewart. I'm the pastor at Riverside Christian Church in Wichita, Kansas, which I know is not in the Southwest region. But for 1,000 years, I was at Creekwood Christian Church, and then after that, Midway Hills Christian Church in Flower Mound in Dallas. And I've done an improvisation, communication, and ethics workshop a million times at CYLS, and I was drafted this year, and I'm always happy to help out with CYLS. So, let's talk about improvisation. Um, Traditionally, this is more of a in-person, very much movement-based, loud, fun kind of workshop, and I'm not sure what to do as I'm sitting in my attic in front of a web camera, but thankfully not on Zoom, except for this. There's kind of going to be a conversational type thing happening right now, and I'm going to make sure that there's a handout that Jonathan Brink will make available to people who watch this because there's going to be some exercises that YMCs and small groups can do to kind of help them facilitate ethical, good team building and communication. So, let's talk about what morals and ethics are, shall we? Morals, I actually wrote down the definition so I don't just bloviate. Morals are a person's standards and behaviors and beliefs concerning what is and is not acceptable for them to do. For example, all of us are morally opposed to murder. I'm assuming, I don't want to make assumptions if I don't have to, but I think that's a fair bet. We think that it is a wrong way to behave. Ethics are the moral principles that govern a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. So, let's talk about fireworks. Okay? Fireworks are oftentimes set off by people who like loud, shiny things in spite of other people wanting to sleep, and communities are generally okay with it, particularly on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th of July, up to a certain hour, which goes late into the night. If the community is fine with it, but you are morally opposed to it because the noise might frighten pets or small children or veterans, and there's a lot of pollution, all the cardboard and uh, ash and sulfur and whatever else that just gets left behind by people who seem inconsiderate and it pollutes the earth. You may be morally opposed to something, but the community is ethically fine with it. Or if we were to talk about camp, for example, and if the community ethic is that there are no cell phones, you may not be morally opposed to cell phones or to using a cell phone. You may, in fact, think that it's connected to your thumbs. But in order to participate fully in the ethic of the community, you have to make a personal choice, even if it is not moral. Thus, you can be ethical without necessarily making a moral stance, and you can be moral without participating in the ethics of a community. All of this to say, right? Here's Philosophy 101 a little bit, is that as a YMC, as leaders in your specific conference or setting or camp, you're called to promote the ethics of the community as they are established for the week or the weeks that you are in servant leadership. It sucks sometimes because it means that you have to be aware that every moment of the day you are being watched, either directly or indirectly, by people who understand you are a leader once you are named to be a leader. So, leadership teams. Here's 3 things you can do to help discern what your ethical stance might be, to help build communication and trust, and of course, to find a way to deconstruct and consider the greater standard of what you want to accomplish the next day. So let's talk about this. This is where the handout comes in handy, by the way. That's why they call it a handout. Okay, number 1, let's talk about yes and. Camping conference is collaborative. It's conversational, right? There's call and there's response. I've noticed that the most effective YMCs, when they come together, do so in a way that listens to every idea. I've also seen YMCs that have a couple of people who have just been cast off the island, as it were, when it comes to planning. And then there's balkanization. Okay, well, Dave's going to do games, and Betty is over worship, and Steve is going to do evening activities, and nowhere between will they meet. Yes, and forces collaboration in the planning and execution of camp and conference, and it's very simple. There's no longer no when it comes to planning. Now consider the implications of that every idea that is put on the table is greeted with yes. A very helpful way to do so is when someone says, I think we should play polo on ponies. That's a dumb idea. But you say, yes, you think we should play polo on ponies. And our budget is $500. We would need to figure out how to rent enough ponies for 80 campers. Yes, we need to figure out how to rent enough ponies for campers on $500. And I know Uncle Steve's Pony Barn down the road will give us a discount. Yes, you know Uncle Steve's Pony Barn will give us a discount. And has anyone talked to Uncle Steve lately? Yes, we need to talk to Uncle Steve, and I have. He said it builds and builds and builds. At some point, there may be holes in the logic, like Uncle Steve doesn't have 80 ponies, or playing polo on ponies would be weird. Like, would you be pushing off with your feet as the little tiny ponies ran? Everybody would be singing Bye Bye Little Sebastian at the top of their lungs and thus not communicating. But starting with yes and is an effective way to let every idea stand. Because here's the deal with ideas. Some people are going to have 1,000 of them. Few of them are going to be great. Some of them are going to be okay. Some of them are going to be absolute stink bombs. Other people are going to have 2 ideas. But if their first idea is rejected, they're not going to share that second idea. And that second idea might be the absolute game changer, that moment that makes camp great. Do yourself a favor and find a way to listen to everyone equitably at the table. There's 2 ways to practice yes and that I recommend. The first is a game called Yes and. Everybody gets a partner and they tell each other a story. The story might start, one day I was walking down the street. The second person says, yes, one day you were walking down the street and a piano fell 5 feet in front of you. Yes, a piano fell 5 feet in front of me and I was so scared I screamed. Yes, you were so scared I screamed. And you build on by always saying yes and always then saying and. Yes, affirm what comes before and build upon it. I wish this camera was wider. I use a lot of hand motions when I talk. Don't say no. Don't say but. Consider yes and. The way to come together as a group is to tell a story one word at a time, because that forces you to affirm what comes before, because what you might want to do is like, once upon a time there was a royal cookie. You need to respect where everyone is going, kind of as a group. You need to listen. You need to be present, and also ultimately not make it about you. You see, that's the challenge in leadership. Some people are extroverted, ideas-based, very loud, live in the future. Hi, I'm one of them. And for them to step back and for introverts to step forward and for everyone to be on equal ground is an intentional ethic that has to be practiced. See, it's all about ethics and communication. All right, number 2. You need to consider what game is being played. There's always a game being played, although it may not be as obvious as football or capture the flag or Monopoly. See, if we're going to say that cell phones are taboo at camp. I don't know if cell phones are still taboo at camp. It's been a while since I've done a camp. Or have we finally surrendered in that battle? Because every time we come up with a creative way to get people to turn over their phones, they find a more creative way to keep them. Anyhow, but let's pretend that it's the communal ethic to say cell phones are not allowed. If a youth leader is caught with a cell phone on a Thursday, what does that mean for the rest of the camp? What game is being played? Well, the game is suggesting that YMC are somehow above the rest of the campers rather than below, lifting them up. And that informs ethics, and that informs the way people act. What does it mean to say that everyone is going to play an evening activity, even if it's very physical, and there are some kids, who are more of the indoor theater types who may not wish to do so? What games are being played? I know my phone is dinging. I'm so sorry. What games are being played when we don't know what we're doing and we're kind of half aware and not really plugged in and not really focused on details? Part of what improvisation does is it creates games. Games intentionally so that we can start to recognize it and we can start to build with one another. Yes and is vitally important, and then finding out the form in which we're going to collaborate as we lead and communicate this leadership is a good and holy and challenging thing. So, I want to tell you one story because it's kind of amazing. There's a game called Say What. It's very simple. You're doing a scene. And the host, at any point in time, if you say something, can say what? And you have to change what you have said. You may say, let's all get in the car, kids. We're going to Disneyland. Say what? Let's all get in a hot air balloon, kids. We're going to Disneyland. Say what? Let's all get in a hot air balloon, kids. We're going to the secret mountain base of James Bond's evil nemesis. That changes the direction of the scene. And the whole point of the game of Say What is to change radically. So one time I was playing this game, and a guy I was playing with, his name was John, I said, let's go fishing for some trout. And the host said, say what? He goes, let's go fishing for some salmon. And the host says, say what? He goes, let's go fishing for some crappie. And the host says, say what? And he goes, let's go fishing for some bass. And he proceeds to go through like 28 different kinds of fish. He just got stuck on a loop. But the game wasn't called Name All the Fish. The game was Say What. We had established the rules. We understood where we were going. And he did not just follow along. So the game I suggest y'all try, and again, this will be on the handout, is called What Are You Doing? What Are You Doing lets people kind of go in a completely different direction on purpose. Person A is going to do an action. For our purposes, we'll say mowing the lawn. Person B will say, what are you doing? And person A is going to say an action that looks nothing like mowing the lawn, so blow drying one's hair. Person B will then start doing what person A has said, so they'll start blow drying their hair. And then person A will say, what are you doing? It's a way to kind of break your brain out from the regular mold. It's a way to perhaps innovate and see the world in a different way. And it's kind of fun, because if you trade people in and out when people mess up, becomes a little competitive in a good and holy kind of way. Okay, so we've talked about yes and. That is the intentional building on ideas and treating all ideas as sacred and building on top of them. And B, finding out what the game being played is. I always found that kind of interesting. So, worship at camp, speaking of games, and this is the last one. If worship's meant to be serious and somber and very, let's call it foot-washy, very experiential, YMC's being high energy and irreverent is probably not as good as YMC's being intentional and thoughtful and encouraging other people to join them without then castigating them or judging them. Or if worship's supposed to be a loud, crazy party, YMC sitting over by themselves, not really engaging, is going to suggest one game but invite people to play another. Play the same game as your campers. Okay, yes and games, and then give gifts. Actual literal gifts are wonderful and always appreciated. If that's your love language, more power to you. Mine is words. But give gifts as in set each other up for success. Here's the beauty of the body of Christ. None of us are Christ, but all of us get to embody Christ. And Christ gave of himself for each of us, for all of us, for any of us, for every last one of us. So, to give gifts is to give yourself away to set up other people to succeed. Consider how that might be done. And I don't know how that may be done in your context, but it may be making sure evening activities are prepped and ready. It may be asking the worship team, what is it you need done right now? It may be saying, I have an hour free. How are we going to make the next thing run smoothly? It may be stopping and making room for the person who doesn't always talk in small group. It may be gently withdrawing yourself if you're a very words-based person like yours truly. However the case may be, consider each day how you might be able to set someone else up to succeed, to do better than you, to be the all-star. Because if everybody does that to everyone, then a rising tide raises all ships. The game at the end is not really at the end. I encourage YMCs in building communication, in building an ethic for their community, and in building a beloved community that is communicated to and with and through. To each night spend 10 minutes decompressing on the day. I've been on the YMC before where it's like an hour and a half long meeting every night, and no thank you. But 10 minutes, it works. And play a wonderful game called Alpha and Omega, okay? Here's the way Alpha and Omega works. Alphas are when you say, this person, who is not yourself, was an all-star today because they did blank. It is a direct praise of someone that is not yourself. Omegas are, upon considering my day, I know that I was helped out by someone else when this happened. So it's kind of a humble brag because you're going to talk about something good that has occurred. But it's something that's good, something that is good that has occurred because of a person making sure that you were taken care of. It's acknowledging a gift. You can do other stuff, surely. Pray, go over the next day. Wonder why you put so much money into pony polo. Do whatever you need to. But find time to celebrate one another, to lift one another up, and to see what happens. So, the big three, one more time. Yes, and. Affirm and build what people bring to the table. Affirm and build upon what people bring to the table. B. What was B? I'm just kidding. I need to look at my notes. Figure out the game that you're playing. Understand that the rules are set up by y'all, and then follow the rules of the game that you're playing. Energizers done without any passion or joy are not energizers. They're depressories. And 3, give gifts to one another because you're in this together and you're going to do great. If you would like more information about this, you're welcome to reach out to me at rev.arthur, arthur.stewart, stewart, at gmail.com. Happy to help out, to collaborate, to corroborate, and to celebrate the good work you're doing. Thank you, guys, and good luck.